the more you buy, the more you save.
So Nvidia's CEO has told us the more that you buy, the more that you save. That's a pretty interesting comment, isn't it? And this, he was talking in reference to all of the new AI stuff, all of the data servers that they have. But I think it also applies to the consumer GPUs if you really read into what he's saying. He even said that you don't have to know the technology, you don't have to know how it works. Just know that the more you buy, the more that you save. I mean, you can read into that comment any number of ways, and he even brought out the 4060 Ti after. I mean, it's pretty incredible if you really think about it. Either he thinks that the audience is stupid, or they just flat out don't care. Let's take the 4060 Ti, for example, and let's apply his words to it. Let's say he said that you don't have to know how it works or what's in it or exactly what it is. Just know that the more you buy, the more you save. And then he even mentioned that the 4060 Ti has amazing AI technology that's really revolutionary in that small GPU. Now, he's referring to DLSS 3 mainly. That's going to be the biggest thing, and of course the rest of the Nvidia software. But this completely ignores the fact that the hardware in the 4060 Ti is actually in some cases worse than the 3060 Ti. Now, don't get me wrong, it has better tensor cores, it has better L2 cache, it does have new technology that specifically addresses the AI, but I even tested a 4060 Ti, and the 3060 Ti really isn't that far off from a 4060 Ti. So what type of improvement is this really? DLSS 3 is only in certain games. It's not even in the majority of games that people play. A lot of brand new games that are very popular, in fact, don't even have DLSS 3. Look at, The Last of Us, Jedi Survivor. These are all like pretty big releases that don't have DLSS 3. They either have FSR or they have the regular DLSS, as in the case of The Last of Us. So I tested a 4060 Ti myself. In my opinion, I think that a truly 100% unbiased review, I have to buy it myself and have the receipt for it. That's why I bought, against my will, the 4060 Ti, so I can show you guys exactly what happens. I was actually shocked in many cases how that GPU is way too close to the 3060 Ti. Yes, when you turn on DLSS 3 when available, it is going to be a bigger difference compared to DLSS 2, but in general, the performance uplift just is not there against this guy, especially in terms of traditional rasterization. And obviously, it's a very efficient GPU. We do have to give it that. I like to be objective and say the positives of that GPU. And to be fair, I really like the Founder Edition designs, like even this 3060 Ti, absolutely beautiful, and the 4060 Ti is no exception. The Founders Edition is certainly a premium product in terms of its build quality, so you are getting that. I mean, the hardware inside, in my opinion, 128-bit memory bus, everything is going to be a little bit too under what it should be, or actually significant under. It should be more like a 4050, but the physical build is good if that's something that matters along with the box. Funny comment, but I know that does matter at times if you're buying a product like this. Let me show you some of these results that I got. If we take a game that does have DLSS 3, let's take Hitman 3, let's put it at 1440p on Ultra with ray tracing. Now, you could say the 4060 Ti is a 1080p GPU, but my opinion, 1440p is what a lot of people are using now, especially enthusiasts. I even asked the question of my audience. The majority are using 1440p, so this is something that is to be expected. As you can see, traditional rasterization, the 3060 Ti got 52 on that benchmark, and the 4060 Ti got 60. That's not that big of a difference. I mean, that's a very minor difference. 8 frames per second isn't really something that is completely revolutionary. Now, if you do turn on DLSS 3 compared to DLSS 2, you do get a bigger uplift, 84 FPS compared to 64, and obviously you do introduce a little bit of more latency, which is mitigated somewhat by Nvidia Reflex, but that's not a very big improvement generation over generation. That's the problem here. This is what is expected of maybe a 4050 or a lower tier GPU. We should be seeing considerably higher numbers. And as we could see, the 3080 Ti completely blows both of them out of the water, even counting DLSS 3. So you can see that it's a completely different tier of GPU. So it doesn't even come close to last generation's best GPUs. Then when we turn on Hogwarts, which is another DLSS 3 game, I'm trying to be fair to the 4060 Ti here, you can see rasterization 36 versus 37 FPS. That is not a very big difference at all. Only when you turn on DLSS 3 does the 4060 Ti really get a significant 77 against 43 of the 3060 Ti. But that certainly isn't something that's really very significant. How about a game that doesn't have DLSS and maybe isn't the best optimized game? Jedi Survivor. Here, the 4060 Ti only manages 47 FPS compared to 44 FPS of the 3060 Ti. This is going to be a very, very small, almost within the margin of error type of difference. So that's not something that is a generational leap at all. And this is where you start to see the hardware limitations of the VRAM on this 4060 Ti, or else it should be getting easily 50 plus FPS or more. For comparison, if we look at a 3080 Ti, that's at 64 FPS. So that's a significant difference for a last generation GPU, but it has 12 gigabytes of VRAM and a 384-bit memory bus, which makes a tremendous difference. How about another traditionally rasterized game? Let's take a look at Horizon Zero Dawn at 1440p Ultimate. Here, the 3060 Ti manages 105 FPS, which certainly isn't bad, but the RTX 4060 Ti only manages 108 FPS. That's almost the same thing. They're almost the same GPU if you don't have DLSS 3. That's within that margin of error. Maybe, if you overclock the 3060 Ti a little bit, I'm sure you could beat a stock 4060 Ti. That is not impressive, and that shows you this 4060 should be an RTX 4050. And then what if you don't use DLSS 3 but FSR 2? As you can see here, the 3060 Ti in Callisto protocol gets around 65 FPS at 1440p, 4060 Ti only 71 FPS. So you see when it's FSR 2 on quality, the difference is minor. 6 FPS is really almost the same thing. You can't really notice that difference, and it could be within the margin of error. If you run this benchmark like 50 times, it's possible you're going to get very close results with those type of numbers. So as we can see here, 3060 Ti is actually very impressive still against the 4060 Ti. And if we look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, here we see the 3060 Ti at 71 FPS, 4060 78, a very modest bump, not really worth that generational leap. For comparison, look at that 6700 XT, that's at 86 FPS. Now, to be fair, this title, this Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, does tend to like AMD GPUs more than Nvidia, but here, 86 FPS is what you would have expected maybe from a 4060 Ti. Yeah, that'd be a much bigger jump, like 15 FPS or so, instead of just 7. So you can see that it's really hitting way below where it should be, telling me that this should be an RTX 4050. That's the point here. This is the type of performance that you would expect from a 4050 and not a 4060 Ti. That's why a lot of people are really kind of upset over this GPU, or maybe a 4060 at best, but certainly not a 4060 Ti at all. So these are actually results done on the same system with a 7800 X3D. As you can see, and many other benchmarks did this as well, the 4060 Ti is really close to the 3060 Ti. Only games that use DLSS 3 have a much bigger difference, but then people think that that's not necessarily a fair comparison because their favorite game, and many of these games didn't even offer DLSS 3, does not have that feature. So until that's like at the driver level, or at least implemented in every single new release, I don't think Nvidia can really push DLSS 3 as AI being such a huge improvement in this generation. So if you buy more, you save more. That means you buy what, a 4090, so you don't have these limitations against last generation. That's basically what Jensen is saying here, and it's obvious from these benchmarks that it's really not worth it. That's the problem. You can't argue with these numbers. Every other benchmark that we've done, every other review basically showed the same thing. Very little improvement over last generation, and AI still isn't good enough yet to really be a big selling point like Jensen is talking about. So until we see some better results, the 4060 Ti continues to be, in my opinion, the worst released GPU in a very long time, even though the box and the GPU itself are pretty cool, but that really doesn't matter when you're paying that money for the performance and not what the box looks like. So I'd rather have a cheap box and a better performing GPU. All right, guys, so remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.